we look forward to hearing your talk. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rob. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get this presentation kicked off. So here we go. All right. And so today we're talking about staying connected to your audience authentically. And one thing that I've noticed over the last couple months as we move into this webinar style is that things move really, really quickly. And so I'm going to ask you to engage, and you'll find that one of the fun facts about me, as Rob kind of alluded to, is that we would 100% rather be looking at your faces in 3D rather than me staring into a camera. I can't even see you guys. So this is what a session of mine would have looked like a year ago. And now today, I'm going to hop into the virtual world, and we'll try to have some fun with this. So one of my goals today is to give you the clarity, confidence, and courage to make meaningful connections with your audience. So if you're there, if you're with us, let's hear a little woohoo if you're ready. So type into the chat, I want to see a woohoo. All right, thank you, team. This will be the first of many times that we use the chat function, and please feel free to put any questions that you have along the way. Rob and Adrian will be monitoring them. You have the option to chat with them directly. So there's a little drop down where you can reply to everybody, or you can reply to just the panelists and the host. So please do feel free to do that, and keep those questions coming. We will hold them until the end when we do our Q&A. And let's do this. So we asked you in the warm-up, tell us one thing that you're hoping to get from today. This will help me tailor my examples and give you quality content. So if you're there in the chat or in the Q&A, please let me know what you're hoping to get from today. I'm going to do my 1-minute introduction while you're typing what you're hoping to get today. So here we go. COVID. 2 months ago, at the start of COVID, fun fact, my son learned how to ride a two-wheeler. So you can see that photo on your left-hand side of the screen. I haven't seen him since he learned how to ride the two-wheeler, so we're having fun with that. I have a 120-pound Great Dane who thinks she is a lap dog. I spent a lot of time on the weekend pulling over 200 weeds from my front lawn, and kind of liked it. So that's what you're seeing there. And then in that last picture, you see me more than 10 years ago when I was managing the, at this point, Niagara Falls Enterprise Center, and I moved on to Rob's role. So it's been 7 years since I held that position, but it's coming full circle for me to be able to speak to this audience. So thank you, folks. Let's see what the survey said. Rob, what are people hoping to get from today?
Well, so far it's a little bit shy, but there's one here that's really meaningful. An organization that doesn't want to be named, but they're navigating COVID-19. They're having to cut their budget a little bit. They're seeing some of their own members cut their marketing and memberships, and they want to make sure they're connecting as much as possible. They're a member-based organization with their members and delivering value for them. So that's something that's that really jumped out.
Great, and I love hearing that this is a membership-based organization, because there's different strategies that go with engaging a membership organization, and also some really great options when we talk about communications and the content that you can produce as a membership-based organization. So that's great, thank you.
Absolutely. So another one is saying, how do I make my connection with my audience fun and help them to be themselves?
Great question. Yeah, so I hope that we will have some fun today. So let's do a little agenda. Here's what we've got in store. We're going to just cover some branding basics. We'll spend maybe 5 or 7 minutes covering some basics that will lend itself well to the 5 tips, which have been, this is a brand new presentation that you're seeing. And so it's very current and relevant content for this COVID environment that we're living in. We'll talk about what's next, and I'm going to ask you for feedback. So full disclosure, I'm in the midst of a pivot as well, and I would love to get your feedback, and I hope that's something that you're not shy about. And then we'll wind down today with a Q&A between Rob and I, who's been collecting all of your questions. And we have the opportunity, if we have time, to do a hot seat session. So if somebody is brave enough to put their name forward, then we can not just tap into the expertise on the panel, but also engage the rest of the audience to talk about some of the content that might be relevant for your audience. So I hope that that sounds good. Sound like a plan? Great, here we go. So let's talk about branding basics. I narrowed this down to 3 core concepts that I wanted to cover with you today. First things first, branding is all about consistency. And so you can see that there's a very famous logo that I've used as the icon for consistency, and you probably recognize it as the Nike logo, but it's upside down. We never see it upside down because Nike is all about consistency in their marks. So just one little example of how consistency becomes so important as we roll out our communication strategy. This next one is one of my favorites. It's a recent one and it's really starting to resonate with me. A great brand should both attract and repel. Now you might be thinking, why would I want to repel people? And I will show you on an upcoming slide a really great example, but we want to stand for something. We want to be so relevant to our audience that we filter out the people that don't matter, or we can even use our branding to dissuade people from contacting us. Why would we want to do that? Because they aren't aligned or they're not our ideal client. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then the third one for branding basics is that people need to know you, like you, and trust you in order to buy from you. And so we want to make sure that we are ultimately conveying a trustworthy image. So that's a bit of an overview of our branding basics. Let's start with a little experiment to reinforce some of these basics. And I can see Rob's already cringing because he knows what's coming, but I'm going to ask you to have some fun and keep an open mind. In a moment, I'm going to show you a logo. Then I'm going to ask you to type in even just one word. When you see that logo, what comes to your mind? Your knee-jerk reaction is what we're looking for. So don't feel like you have to filter. You can do this anonymously if you're concerned about what people are going to think about you, but type into the chat as many words that come to your mind. And remember, there's no wrong answers. We're doing a brand experiment, so it's about how it resonates with you as the audience. So here we go. Our logo is Disney. So you can see our little chat icon in the corner is reminding you that this is an opportunity to participate. So again, we're looking for 3 to 5 words that come to mind in the chat, knowing that there are no wrong answers. What are you thinking about when you see that logo, when you think about Disney? What picture does that paint in your mind? So we'll give you a second to think about that. Rob's already giggling, so that's great. And we'll see how this little experiment goes, because really, when we talk about reputations, reputations are based on repetition. And so we want to know what is the collective thought about Disney. So Rob, what do we got?
Well, it's fantastic. They're flowing in. There's happy. There's I want to start at the top here. There's fun, magical, niceness, happiness, children, magic, princesses, really flowing, creativity and happiness, vacation, Pixar, family, kids, fun, musical, creativity, colorful, Mickey, Wonder World, imagination, a lot of really positive, happy, upbeat comments coming through, dreams and imagination as well.
Awesome. All right, now I'm going to throw a wrench into everything. And I want you to prepare to put your reaction to my next slide in the chat. So I'm going to throw a wrench into our Disney vision. You guys nailed it. But first I'm going to share with you some of my words. So again, there's no right and wrong, but these are some of the words that I came up with. And it's interesting that as Rob read those, we heard, Mickey Mouse, we heard princesses, we heard fun and happiness and some of those great words. So we're starting to get a really great idea of how Disney has successfully managed their brand. So here's my question for you. And I'm looking for your reaction in the chat. What would happen if Disney started making adult films?
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. You're trying to get me fired, Jess.
I know, poor Rob, poor Rob. Okay, so I'm looking for people's reactions. Maybe your reaction was something like this. Scandalous. Say what? Wait, what? Or just maybe cowering on the floor to that. And so, does that sound about right, Rob?
There's disgusting, it's messed up, bye-bye Disney as we know it. That would be weird.
Oh, it's funny. I wish I had chosen the weird Bitmoji now. I also had one slated for this one that said, that's dark. So yes, that's right. And I've done this by design, and I'm sorry if I've made anybody uncomfortable. Really, the reaction is, how about no? No, Disney, you can't do this. You cannot shatter my dreams. And so let's talk about really why that that scenario really made us so uncomfortable. And when we go back to those branding fundamentals, we find that number one, that is not consistent with Disney's brand. Disney's brand is so well groomed, is so curated, that to hear that, you know, I used an extreme example, which is often the best way to illustrate a point, that is not consistent. That would definitely start to repel some of the existing audience that we've worked so hard to establish. But you might start attracting a whole new clientele, just not sure if it's the one that you want. And of course, this shatters the way that we trust Disney. As a parent, if I knew that Disney had started doing this type of movies, I would be perpetually fearful of what type of pop-ups were going to come on Disney Plus. So it just wouldn't make sense. So here's a great example of counterintuitive branding and how important it is to stick with your strategy. So I mentioned this earlier, reputations thrive on repetition. There is that consistency piece. And why we do that is because that repetition, that consistency leads to feelings of recognition, of reliability, of stability, of loyalty, and of trust. So these are really important things that we want people to be feeling about our brand. So let's jump into our 5 tips for staying connected to your audience authentically. Here's number 1. Get clear about who you're talking to. Now, this isn't different than a pre-COVID world, but there is a great opportunity here to maybe you've just got the time to do it now, or maybe you've got a little bit more clarity about figuring out who it is that you're talking to very, very specifically. And I want you to think about not just who your current clientele is, but I want you to think about your aspirational clientele. So who is it that you are currently serving, and who is it that you want to be serving, or that you want to be serving more? I want you to think about your dream client versus your nightmare client. And this has been a fantastic exercise that I've just done recently, in that thinking about some of those dream clients who you just wish you could work with. You wish you could clone them and have an entire roster of clients like that. So start to think about those dream clients. What was it that made them so great? How did you behave? How did you interact? And then I want you to think about your nightmare client. And you know, like right away, it was probably easier to think about a nightmare client than it was to think about a dream client. So the same way that you would think about the things that you want in a client, you want to start to itemize the things that you don't want in a client, and how you can be attracting and repelling those same clients, how you can be attracting and repelling the right clients to bring them to your business, or to keep them away from your business, because we know that they cost us extra time, extra energy, and ultimately extra profit. So dream client versus nightmare client. And I'm going to give you an example here. This goes to the attracting and repelling. This post that you see, it was actually a video, and at the back there in the white stripes, that's your girl here. This was a post that we put out on a board retreat. The facilitator decided to take us into a gym, and we got into groups of 3 and started dancing, imitating the leader, playing follow the leader. So it was a really high energy. It was really fun. I got some feedback from somebody that said, that's the exact opposite type of board retreat that I would want to attend. And I there might have been a tiny bit of being offended at first, but but ultimately I realized not everything is everybody's taste. And so I'm not going to try hard to win over somebody that just doesn't align with my style or that just isn't a fit with my style. So I really want you to spend some time thinking about who it is that you're trying to attract and who it is that you're trying to repel, and not trying to be everything to everybody. If you want to be the dancing facilitator, you rock on. You'll find the right people that way. I want you to think about your case study client. Over the past couple years, I've spent a lot of time trying to really narrow down the market and figure out who exactly I'm speaking to. And so one of the great exercises that we've done has been figuring out the answer to what do you do? So it would sound something like this. Oh, so hi, what do you do? And I'd say, I help leaders build their dream teams. Then they would say, how do you do that? Which is what you want them to say. You want that answer to beg another question. And then my example, my case study client, if I was outside of the region, I'd probably say, have you heard of White Oaks? Since we're in Niagara, you've probably heard of White Oaks. And then I would go into the story, depending on the first part of our conversation. I would talk about how White Oaks came to me with a problem. They'd had their best year ever from a revenue and profitability side. Now, it's one thing to get to the top of your game, it's another thing to stay there. And so that was the start of a relationship that ended up between seminars and strategy and keynotes. They've kind of done it all with me. So this is a great example where I can come up with an example that's relevant to the audience by answering that question, but it also gives you insights into who you want to be attracting. So think about who that case study client is, who you would talk about when somebody asks, what do you do and how do you do that? And that's going to help get you to your perfect dream client. And then once we found that perfect dream client, the strategy becomes appeal to many but speak to one. And so you really want to try to create an avatar, a profile, whatever word works for you. I've heard this said about authors, that they will actually frame a picture of their intended audience, whether that's a real person or somebody that they found on the internet that represents their audience. I love to think about a real person in my life as my avatar, and I think about talking to them. And that keeps my tone, it keeps my the different words that I use on brand, so that we can appeal to that ideal client. So really want to be talking to that one person. So here's our recap from number one. You want to get clear about who you're talking to, thinking about your current clients and your aspirational clients. And you want to ask yourself, who's my dream client? Who's my nightmare client? Who's my case study client? And who is that avatar? And then I want you to talk to your people so that you can talk to your people. So talk to that representative group so that you can understand how they represent that dream client or that case study client. Number two, choose your channel to align with your audience. So when I say channel, it's easy to think about things like social media. Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it LinkedIn? Is it YouTube? But don't forget other channels that you might have with your clients, like email, telephone, your newsletters, the different ways that you can be communicating with people. And ultimately, you want to design it so that they're saying, yay, it's you, when they see you in your field, not, that again. So you want to make sure that you're choosing your channel to align with your audience. Where are your people? And what are they doing there? You might have the same people in different mediums or in different areas, but they're looking for different things. And so when we talk about content, it's not really about content, it's about relevant content and relevant context for that audience. Now I'm going to do a little throwback example, because I know that we've got people from Innovate Niagara here, which was my first ever client when I left the Enterprise Center. So this was a post from a few years ago. The story was about a mobile ordering app for coffee. So nowadays we've got Skip the Dishes, we've got all kinds of things that make this an older example, but they were piloting a program where they got to this mobile ordering system. So from the Next Niagara brand, which I was managing at the time, it was all about success stories. So both of these were on Twitter, but Next Niagara cared about success stories, promoting what was awesome about Niagara. And so we positioned this as a success story in the making, a new mobile ordering app running a 2-week pilot starting this week. And then the exact same content, but with a completely different context for Innovate Niagara. And in this case, we talked about eliminating wait times and idling cars. This is about staying cutting edge. This is about efficiency. The new mobile ordering and payment app runs a 2-week pilot. So you can see the same message, but tailored differently based on what the audience is looking for. Again, we talk about content marketing, and this is a great opportunity to be a thought leader. So this is where you can be talking, doing blogs, infographics like you can see on the screen. Maybe it's a how-to video. Maybe you're even doing a webinar, but anything that showcases your expertise. Now, I know that we talked about membership-based organizations joining us. So here's a great idea for your content marketing. If you're a membership organization, start to spotlight your members. So this is a really great way to maintain a consistent content, but also to engage your members because you know that they're going to share that profile that you did with them. So there's one way to do it. And here's an example of something that I did lately in the content marketing side. A lot of people were asking, how do I add a virtual background to Zoom? And for my clients where I do team development sessions, I use a virtual background so that you could see my profile right there on the screen. And so I had fun with this. I was doing this for a very specific audience. I was speaking to one audience. That's why you can see the hat. You can see I'm in my workout clothes because this was very late one night. But I got kind of goofy and started making weird faces and screenshotting it. And then once this was created, I passed it along to the client it was intended for, but shared it with some of my peers. And they said, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Can you post that here so I can share it too? And so this little how-to guide has quickly become a content piece that keeps me relevant and timely with my audience. Number 2, wrap up. Ask yourself, as you're choosing your channel to align with your audience, where are your people? What are they doing there? And how does that align with the values and your offer? So how does it align with your own company values and how does it align with what you're offering? You don't necessarily need to be making offers right now. You know, we'll probably talk about this more in Q&A. At what point do I actually start selling? There's a number of things that depends on, but you want to start to think about how does that align with your values and your offer. Here's number 3, be relevant, be relatable, and be real now more than ever. And I'll share briefly, I mentioned that I'm starting to write a book. This has been kind of the thing that saved me from the COVID cycle. I did a post about writing a book and it went over like a lead balloon. And I realized that people aren't really ready to hear about how other people are thriving, or at least 4 weeks ago they weren't. So, you know, you really want to make sure that you're staying relatable and staying real to your audience, because we know that people don't buy for logical reasons, they buy for emotional reasons. And that's a Zig Ziglar, and we alluded to that earlier when we talked about what that consistency, those feelings that consistency leads to. So we really want to be tapping into the emotional side of people, because that's ultimately what's going to make them react and buy. Another great tip, if you want to stay relevant and stay real, is to have a sidecar interest. And this is a quote from a fellow whose session I attended back in December. He talked about the importance of having a sidecar interest, something that you can talk about on your social channels or with your audience that keeps you relatable and might even attract people or start conversations that you never would have had before. And so I mentioned off the top that I've got kids and I've got a Great Dane who thinks she's a lap dog. And I found a couple other people who have Great Danes, and we've kind of started this little Great Dane posting back and forth where we really support each other through that. So you never know where that's going to lead. My love of Great Danes has also led to a speaking gig. So having a sidecar interest makes you more relatable. So you can see the examples here, whether it's pets, cooking, wine tends to be a big one locally, maybe basketball, that one's for you, Jeff Chesborough in the audience, bowling, but all of these little avatars represent somebody in my life as I was thinking about these examples. So having a sidecar interest will spark and help keep you top of mind, even when you're not in your own lane, so to speak. Another way to stay relevant, stay connected, stay real is to use visual words. So look at the words on the left of the screen: innovative, authentic, value add. It's really hard to get a picture in your mind when we say those words. But the words near my little painter Bitmoji say lightning, splash, elephant. Instantly you can picture something in your mind. So that's helping you to stay real and to stay relatable to your audience just by the language that you're choosing. Here's another great local example, and full disclosure, Brand Boulevard, Chris Sinclair, I believe, is on this call. Give us a little woohoo if you're here, Chris. Brand Boulevard just started a Wearing is Caring campaign, and so you can imagine that as a group of people that sell promotional products, that like many of us, their business had a significant decline a couple months ago when all of this happened. And so in their rally, since then, they have put together a great campaign knowing that community is one of their values. So this made a lot of sense, and it was a really easy thing for the audience to pick up. So they started a Wearing is Caring campaign, and they have a whole selection of shirts that support frontline workers, that talk about being proud of being in Niagara and how we're in this together. And one of the spin-offs from this has been, this was just yesterday, so this couldn't be more up to date. Brand Boulevard partnered with Dillon's Distillers, and I don't know if Jeff Dillon is still on your hockey team, Chris Sinclair, but I know that y'all met through there. And so they had a natural partnership, a natural alignment in real life. And when this opportunity came up for them to help brand Dillon's in the wake of their big media storm a couple weeks ago, this is what's happened. So a great partnership has developed, and it got Chris some airtime. So that's a great thing. I see Rob smiling, so I'm wondering what's going on in the chat, which I can't see right now, but I'll keep going. So to be relevant, to be relatable, to be real, you really want to be asking yourself, how can I be of service? Whether it's related directly to your business or not, you want to be thinking about how you can be of service to your community. Think about what your sidecar interest is and how you can geek out with people about that. And think about how you can use some visual words to help illustrate your points and to help people connect with your concept. Number 4, lean into your COP, or community of practice. So who else, who are your peers in your industry? What are the things that they are talking about that are relevant to your industry? We've seen a lot happening in, for example, the food industry. Support local, you know, or with your local gym or your hairdresser, you know, people were talking about buying certificates. But what I want to see is hairdressers coming together, or food industry coming together and really making a statement. So how can you lean into your community of practice to be relevant, to understand the issues that are topical? And here's an example. This is a very, very hyper niche example. Charlotte Blair is one of my peers from Australia, and she started immediately into COVID in a secret little Facebook group, a very niche Facebook group for people with our same certification. She started talking about how she could support maybe some people that weren't as far along at facilitating as she was. So she was doing practice Zoom breakout sessions, collecting people from her community. And then what I thought was brilliant was a few weeks later, she made the offer. And so that's what you can see on the right of your screen. You know, some of you know here over the years, I've been running workshops, and then down there it says, note, there is a $200 charge for this one. I know I've been doing a lot of free this week, but not share. I've been doing a lot for free. So she's reminding us, she's been giving, but now it's time for her to make some money from that value. So there's one example of how you can be asking for a sale, especially when you've got something that is extreme, and almost only if you've got something that's extremely relevant to your audience right now and can help them get through this. So number 4, ask yourself, what issues matter to my industry? Is it on brand to advocate? Because I know that sometimes you feel a little bit browbeaten when somebody jumps up on a soapbox and starts talking too much about a certain topic. You want to hear about their Great Dane, or you want to hear about their kids once in a while, not just being browbeaten about what the significance is that's happening in the industry. So make sure that you balance that advocating with staying real. And can you connect or collaborate with your peers? And you never know what type of business opportunities will come from that. It's also a great way to position yourself as a thought leader. Number 5, give people something to smile about. See, Rob, I'm doing a lot of things differently now than I would have done 7 years ago. Even the Bitmoji sitting on the toilet, you know, never would have done it. The unicorn, never would have done it. But now, 7 years into entrepreneurship, this is where you get weird Bitmojis. So give something to smile about. Here's a few examples. The one on the left is an old one. Come and try the worst pizza one guy on TripAdvisor ever had in his life. Check out this middle one. See if you can figure it out. This is a visual earworm. So what song is playing in your head when you look at that middle one? We will rock you. So just something fun that you know, sharing it with your personal network, sharing it, you know, the relevance of sharing it with a professional network, it made people smile. So there's something else. And then here's another local example, and this one's really fun. You will see downtown city councillor in St. Catharines, Ontario, Matt Cisco, rocking what can only be called the Friar Tuck hairdo. Because his wife, actually both he and his wife have turned 40 since COVID started, 1 month apart. And that's Chrissy, his wife there on the far right of your screen with the blonde hair. She is now bald. She shaved her head for her 40th birthday, but she didn't just shave her head for her 40th birthday. She made it a fundraiser, and Chrissy's background is in fundraising. She's not directly involved with fundraising anymore, but she was selected as an ambassador for the Niagara Children's Center. And being a personal friend of mine, we were talking, she says, I don't even want to celebrate my 40th birthday this year. If I can't have a party, I don't want to do it. And within the same week, she was also talking about shaving her head. And I said, Chrissy, you've got to do something. It's on brand. Why don't you consider doing a fundraiser and shave your head? Shave your head when you raise the money. And so she did a great thing. She got in touch with the Niagara Children's Center. They did a little bit of strategizing, and her goal was $1,500. If she got to $1,500, she would shave her head. If she got to $1,000, then Matt would shave his head, and at $500, their son would shave their head. So what happened, she gave herself a week. She started this on May 11th, and her birthday was May 18th. And what ended up happening was in the first 24 hours, she smashed her goal by 100%. So her goal was $1,500. She ended up over $3,000. And within the week, she hit $12,000 of funds raised. So talk about strong branding for the Niagara Children's Center, who selected her as an ambassador, and talk about something fun to watch. I mean, it's not every day you get to see your city councillor get their head shaved, let alone capturing this splendid moment of the Friar Tuck hair. So as you're giving people something to smile about, think about how can you give somebody something to smile about? Can you give somebody something to look forward to? I think we're all just really looking forward to something. And how can you spread positivity? So you'll want to dial it up or dial it down depending on your own brand persona. But there's some of those, some great things that you can do to help people smile. So here's your recap. Know your who. Who are you talking to, and who's that ideal juicy client? Align your channels to match that audience. And don't forget about how content and context can play into it. Be relevant, be relatable, be real. Lean into your community of practice and share a smile. So hopefully now you're ready to go. I'd love to offer help in any way that I can, especially to this Niagara audience. If this was 7 years ago, you would have been my clients too. So if you'd like a copy of this slide deck, then send an email to hello@inspiredstrategy and title it slides or May 27th, we'll get it to you. And if you want to see the latest, this Linktree/Jeessica Potts will take you to all of the things that are happening nowadays. So before we go, before I turn it over for Q&A, I'm looking for your feedback now, audience. As acknowledged, many of us are in the midst of a pivot. And so I'm looking for topics that you might find valuable. You don't have to type the topic, but in the chat, if it's something that you think would be interesting, just type the number. So today's topic, expanded with worksheets and action plans. Could I be of service to you if I focus my energy there? Would you like more resources on making great videos and what the heck to do with them once you've made them? Do you want to talk about leveling up your virtual presentations? What about leveling up your virtual meetings? And there is a distinction. Presentations and meetings are not the same animal. Are you looking for virtual facilitation tools? Are you looking to repurpose your content? So once you've made that video, what do you do with it? And what are your other options so that you're not spending as much time? And crafting your personal brand or leadership story. So if any of these would be of interest, Rob will download the chat and that will give me some great feedback. So thank you sincerely from Niagara to Niagara. That's it for me. Thanks everybody. And let's go over to Rob for Q&A.
Absolutely. So yeah, I see the people are putting in their numbers there, and a lot of good engagement. We'll see if anybody has a question for Jeessica on this topic. So Jeessica, it's been fantastic. I really appreciate the energy that you've brought. A couple surprises for me, but that's okay.
This is, in no way is this a reflection of Rob. Rob still has his job and I don't. So.
No, it's funny. It's good. I don't see any questions filtering in just yet. A lot of appreciation and comment just saying the reminders I needed and then some. So thank you, Jeessica. Awesome. Somebody's asked if there will be a replay. Yes, we do have that ability. We've recorded the webinar, and we can do a replay. There's a lot of great content here. Looks like there is a question. There's a question here about reviews. So Jeessica, this comes up quite a bit. How do you manage a bad review?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is don't take it personally and shake it off. That's probably, like, I think about the knee-jerk reaction to those types of responses. The next thing is respond to it really timely. So respond to respond to any review, but particularly negative reviews. Respond to those as quickly as you can. Be real, be sincere, be authentic. Acknowledge what their concern is. So do not get defensive. That's probably the worst thing that you could do, is get defensive or try to over-explain what it is. You can acknowledge the reason, but you really want to acknowledge how they're feeling, acknowledge their perspective, and then try to quickly take it offline. That's one of the best things you can do. The jury's out. Do you ask them, if you can win them over, do you ask them to remove the review? Do you talk to your friends about counteracting that bad review with a great review? I think that the most important thing, if we're talking about bad reviews, is to just try to connect as sincerely and authentically with your audience without being defensive. They've got their perspective, you've got yours. You had great reasons for doing whatever it was that you did or didn't do, or maybe you didn't. Maybe it's just you know what, thanks for bringing that to our attention. We're going to use this as a teaching opportunity for our team, and then give feedback. So if you've gone to if you've made a corrective step, if the client or customer felt wronged by you and you've taken action, then share it back with them to show how sincere that you took that.
Let's look at some of the early comments and what people are looking for. I think you've done a really good job of addressing, like, the membership-based organization. We have a photographer who commented early on about how she'd love to learn to be more relatable and empathic to customers. And I think you already are, just saying that to the person who mentioned that. But they're definitely tough times.
Yeah, and it's funny, I think about, as we hear about a photographer, I think about my photographer right now, who I have a relationship with a photographer. And one of the things that she's done is been sharing photos. So even on a post, I shared a personal post of my kids head to toe in mud. And my photographer took a photo of me from last July of me jumping in a mud puddle and said, they got it from their mama. And I thought, what a great way to just keep connected to your audience. To, you know, if you're in a situation where you're a photographer, you've got content of other people. What a great opportunity to share, bring smiles, throwbacks and memories. This is a great position for you to be in.
Right, absolutely, thank you. Another question's come in is, I work in a professional field and I want to find ways to be engaging, but I'm unsure how to balance being professional, giving the brand some personality. What are some tactics that have worked for you, you know, as being professional, but engaging people and infusing some personality into a brand?
This is the big struggle. I have to say, especially as an owner-operator type brand. So this is a much longer answer, and I hope I'm going to give you something that's worth it. But I've been toggling between the Jeessica Potts brand and the Inspired Strategy Group brand, and trying to really figure out the distinction. One of the best pieces of advice I was given was that Jeessica Potts acts as an ambassador for Inspired Strategy Group. And so that gives me the opportunity to inject a little bit of my personality outside of the brand. But at the same token, Inspired Strategy wants to be attracting people that are fun, that are lighthearted, that have a lot of energy, that are lifelong learners. So I need to really make sure that I'm balancing the appeal. And that's why I made the decision to post a picture of us dancing. I mean, I was dancing in that. That was a little embarrassing. There was a lot of embarrassment with that, but you know what? Just have fun with it. So I hope that answers your question, how to engage the audience interactively and find a fun way. You know, you can be asking questions. A great thing that happened around the 6-week mark, when everybody was looking at their COVID hair and trying to figure out what to do with it. I posted a throwback picture of me at the tender age of 9 with the worst haircut I've ever had, and said, so show me yours. Let's see the worst haircut that you've ever had. And it was one of my most engaging posts. It was a personal post. It had nothing to do with my business, but it got people talking. And then, you know, maybe somebody clicked over, maybe somebody else knows what I do a little bit more, even though it was unrelated content. So right now, I wouldn't be really concerned about positioning yourself for a sale right now. You need to be positioning yourself for the sale in 3 months and 6 months.
Right. Okay, perfect. There's another question that's come through. We've got time for a couple more questions. What strategies would you recommend to an entrepreneur who wants to connect authentically and put out a lot of content without blurring the lines between their professional and personal lives?
Why do you want to blur? Why are you concerned about blurring the lines? Oh, my chair, hold on. I don't know how that happened, but blooper reel.
Yeah.
So you're concerned about blurring the lines between personal and professional. Some of the biggest brands, and when I say brands, I mean like more individualized brands, say that if you're doing it right, there shouldn't be a divide between personal and professional. Now, I haven't quite gotten there yet. I still find, for example, Twitter, where I'm very much branded Inspired Niagara, where I share things about the community. Nobody wants to hear about my business on Twitter, which is a little bit surprising because Twitter does tend to be a more, it's kind of a hybrid network. But so I'm curious, why do you want to blur the lines? Because it helps you to be relatable, it helps you to be real. Right now, more than ever, you know, my spouse took my kids out of the house for this particular session, but it's not uncommon for a kid to breeze into the screen and maybe give mom a little kiss on the cheek. So I wouldn't be as concerned about blurring those lines. I think that it's probably a much deeper question, but just being authentically you, talk about why you got into the business that you're in. That's always a really great way to stay authentic and to blend those blurry lines. So focusing on why you do what you do and what brings you so much satisfaction from the job or the clients that make you feel alive, those types of things are going to make it more authentic as you sort of decide how to integrate your personal and professional brand. And I'm telling you, that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. I'll make a note.
Right. Well, there's also, I know for some people, and I don't think this is the case, I don't know if this is the case, but sometimes there's that privacy concern too, right? Of you put yourself out there professionally, but you want to maybe protect your family life and those sorts of details. So
yeah, and so sometimes you choose your mediums. You know, for me, Facebook has generally been a place where I'm sharing stuff about the kids, about the family. I've actually had a social media consultant tell me anything that's tagged with Inspired Niagara, that brand, should be completely devoid of my children.
mm,
And I can tell you that that didn't go over well, because that would just be completely inauthentic. I got into my line of work. I left the role at the St. Catharines Enterprise Center so that I could balance my life with my kids. And so I realized that that was a great opportunity to talk about the lifestyle that I'm permitted as somebody who's self-employed, and how to integrate the kids into it. So I think that people will find, I've actually brought my kids into or discussions about my kids into my last newsletter. I had a newsletter scheduled to go the Friday of March break, and had to do a little bit of a pivot with my content. And
right.
It was actually one of the most authentic communications I've had when I started talking about the kids. We played neighborhood bingo, and I put a picture. I've never talked about my kids in a professional newsletter communication, but and the responses that came back were amazing. And then I could also see how many people had downloaded neighborhood bingo as well. So there's crossover, and maybe part of your market is, you know, your ideal client is somebody in a similar demographic. You know, for me, I've got kids, so I can relate really well to other people who have kids this age. Oh, and they happen to be in business. Oh, and they happen to have budgetary discretion. So again, it's kind of that sidecar interest that keeps you relevant and relatable.
Gotcha. Great answer. Another question is, if I'm trying to build my newsletter, but I'm struggling to get followers, do you have any tips on growing a following with a newsletter, and how do you do it? What do you include?
I mean, the best way to tell your story is to have somebody else tell it. So if you know, have somebody else say, this is a person that you need to follow. This content is really great and is really relevant. But you know, cross-posting on different mediums and having engaging, you know, what was your worst haircut? Again, that works really well for a hairdresser, but there's different ways of engaging with that. And then you know, everything should really filter back to, if you're putting links out there, bring it back to your own pages where you've got your prompt to sign up. There's also regulations about about how you can get in touch with people. And so if you've had correspondence with somebody, then they can be put on your emailing list. But it's the trickiest thing, is getting people to sign up for your email list, because they're allowing you permission to come into them. One thing that I do is I make sure that it's known. I only send a newsletter about every 2 months. And so helping people understand the frequency and the type of content that they're getting, or even having an opt-in, what type of content are they looking for? And right now we're pursuing different brands within my brand. So some people are really into this best day ever thing. Some people just want management and business tips. Some people are looking specifically for community building type things. So we're starting to filter our newsletter lists to make sure that the content can be tailored towards them. So just being honest with people and saying, hey, I'm trying, a friend of mine, Patricia Regier, was just trying to get to 100 YouTube subscribers. And the big shiny thing at the 100 subscribers mark on YouTube is that you get to customize your URL. So she shared her journey. She was vulnerable in many ways, and she shared her journey. Hey, I'm up to 67. Can you help me? And so it can be a similar thing, that if you're willing and able to sort of make yourself vulnerable to your audience and endear yourself to your audience and help them understand what you're trying to do, then that's another way that you can help build that list.
Perfect. Wonderful. I think that's all for questions. We're starting to get close to our time in the room. It really is funny with Zoom. We have shared subscriptions at the city, so I equate it to a room and a room booking, where we run out of time shortly. Are there any final thoughts, Jeessica? How can people reach you, and any last comments they'd like to make?
So you can reach me. I've put my email address right into my name bar, so it should say Jeessica Potts, hello@Inspired Strategy. Please feel free to reach out. Find me on social media. I'm pretty engaged that way. But oh, thank you, Rob. But for final thoughts, if you've ever had questions about how much I can say, you know, that line blurring question that we had about personal and professional, now is the time to really just have fun, to focus on that number 5, focus on making people smile, making people feel good with your interactions. And that's one of the most one of the best ways that you can be authentic in your communications.
Wonderful. That's a great way to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Jeessica, and thank you to everybody who was here with us. Our friend Jeff said goodbye just a minute ago. Jess, he had to run off to another meeting. He just wanted to say thanks and great job. And thank you to everybody who was here. If the Enterprise Center can be of service to you, we're here to help. We have a number of webinars. When you registered for this one, you were probably asked, well, you would have been asked to join our newsletter list as well. And you can follow us on Facebook, and those are the 2 primary ways that we're letting people know about our programming. So Jeessica, thank you so much for volunteering your time. I don't know if people realize that you've donated your time. You've been a great supporter of mine and of the office, and I'm eternally grateful to you. So thank you, Jeessica.
Thanks, Rob. It's always a pleasure. Have a great day, guys.
You too. Take care. I'll